The 7:30 a.m. bus, third seat on the left. For 20 years, this old man's routine never changed. Nobody talks to him, he doesn't talk to anybody. Just stares out the window, silent. But that day, when three men boarded at the downtown stop, they weren't regular passengers. And the old man wasn't just a regular retiree either. Welcome to Human Stories. Before we dive into this powerful story of silence, survival, and hidden identity, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who've served in ways we never imagined. Route 47 ran through the heart of Portland, Oregon every morning at exactly 7:30 a.m. Rain or shine, the old Metro bus would pull up to the corner of Pine and 12th Street, doors would hiss open, and the same passengers would climb aboard like actors in a play they'd been performing for decades. Marcus Thompson had been driving this route for 15 years, and he knew every regular by heart. The coffee shop girl with her earbuds always in. The construction crew heading to the docks, the office workers with their smartphones and tired eyes, and him, the old man in seat 7, left side, 3 rows back from the front. Nobody knew his real name. The driver's manifest just listed him as Senior Pass number 4471. Marcus called him Pops when he had to, but mostly they just nodded at each other. A simple acknowledgement between two men who understood that some people didn't need words to communicate respect. The old man was probably in his 70s, Marcus figured. Gray hair kept military short, always wore the same faded olive green jacket that looked like it had seen better decades. His jeans were clean but worn. Boots were black leather that had been resoled more than once. He carried a small canvas messenger bag and a thermos that never seemed to empty. Every morning, same routine. Board at Pine Street, exact change, no words. Walk directly to seat 7, sit by the window, pull out a worn paperback novel, and read while watching the city wake up outside. He never slept, never used a phone, never spoke to anyone, just existed in his own quiet space. The other passengers had created their own mythology about him over the years. Sarah, the barista, thought he was probably a widower killing time. Mike from the construction crew figured he was a veteran with nothing better to do. The office workers barely noticed him at all, just part of the urban furniture. But Marcus noticed things others didn't, the way the old man's eyes constantly scanned the mirrors, tracking who got on and off, how he always positioned himself with a clear view of both exits. The fact that his reading involved a lot more watching than actual page-turning. And something else. The old man's hands. They were steady, controlled, and scarred in ways that spoke of a life most people couldn't imagine. The first hooded man stood up suddenly, too fast, too purposeful. His hand came out of his pocket holding something that made Sarah gasp and Mike swear under his breath. The second man moved to block the rear exit. The third walked toward the front, toward Marcus. "Nobody moves," the first one said, his voice cracking with adrenaline. "Nobody makes a sound." Sarah started crying. One of the office workers pulled out his phone until the second gunman shook his head. The construction crew froze. 3 big men suddenly reduced to scared civilians. "Driver," the third man said, his weapon now visible, pointed at the floor but unmistakable. "Keep driving. Don't touch the radio. Don't do anything stupid." Marcus's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. 20 years of safe routes, of predictable passengers, of quiet morning routines. And this was how it would end. He thought about his wife, about their daughter starting college next month, about all the things he'd never said. In the back of the bus, panic was spreading like wildfire. Whispered prayers, stifled sobs, the metallic taste of fear filling the air. 14 innocent people trapped in a moving metal box with 3 armed men who looked like they were making it up as they went along. But in seat 7, something else was happening. The old man had closed his book. Not hurried, not dramatic, Just a simple, deliberate action that somehow changed the entire atmosphere of the bus. He folded his hands in his lap and waited, as still as a stone in a rushing river. The first gunman was sweating now, his weapon wavering as he tried to watch everyone at once. "Everybody stay calm," he repeated, but his own voice betrayed his nervousness. "We just need to get somewhere, then you're all going home to your families." That's when the old man spoke for the first time in 20 years of riding the 7:30 bus. "Son," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute calm, "you need to think about what you're doing here." Every head turned toward seat 7. The first gunman spun around, his weapon now pointed directly at the old man, who hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, hadn't even looked up from his folded hands. "Shut up, old man," the gunman snapped. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually," the old man replied, still in that same quiet tone, "it concerns me quite a bit." And then he stood up. It wasn't fast. It wasn't threatening. He just rose from his seat with the fluid grace of someone half his age, and suddenly the entire dynamic of the bus shifted. The other passengers sensed it, some primal recognition that the hunter-prey relationship had just become more complicated. "Sit down," the second gunman shouted from the back. "Sit down now!" The old man turned slightly, just enough to make eye contact. "What's your exit strategy?" he asked conversationally. The question hung in the air like smoke, because that's when everyone realized, including the 3 gunmen, that they didn't have one. This wasn't a bank robbery or a carjacking. This was 3 scared kids with weapons they probably didn't know how to use, trapped on a city bus with nowhere to go. "I said sit down." The first gunman's voice cracked with panic. The old man took a step into the aisle. "You've got maybe 4 minutes before Portland PD realizes this bus hasn't checked in, maybe 6 before they set up roadblocks, maybe 8 before SWAT shows up." How did he know that, Marcus found himself wondering. How did this quiet old man who never spoke to anyone know police response protocols? "You're in a metal box on wheels with 14 witnesses, no cover, and limited mobility," the old man continued, taking another slow step forward. "Your communication is compromised because you're using cell phones the NSA can track in real time. Your weapons—" He paused, tilted his head slightly. "Those are Saturday night specials. Cheap, unreliable, probably haven't been cleaned in months." The second gunman's hand was shaking now. "How do you know all that?" The old man smiled for the first time in 20 years of bus rides. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Because I used to teach people like you how not to make mistakes like this." That's when the first gunman made his fatal error. He lunged forward with his weapon raised, intent on shutting up the old man who had somehow taken control of their operation just by standing up. He never made it. What happened next took exactly 4 seconds, but it felt like watching a movie in slow motion. The old man moved with liquid precision, years of muscle memory overriding decades of peaceful retirement. His left hand deflected the weapon while his right delivered a surgical strike to the gunman's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor as the attacker doubled over in pain. Before the second gunman could react, the old man had pivoted and thrown something, Marcus never saw what, that struck him squarely in the chest and dropped him like a stone. The weapon skittered under a seat. The third gunman, the one who had been threatening Marcus, spun around with his gun raised, but the old man was already moving. A swift kick to the knee, a precise chop to the wrist, and the last weapon joined its brothers on the bus floor. 3 armed men, neutralized in less than 5 seconds by a 70-something retiree in a faded olive jacket. The bus went completely silent, except for the hum of the engine and the soft groaning of the 3 would-be hijackers writhing on the floor. The old man calmly collected their weapons, checked each one with professional efficiency, then looked at Marcus in the rearview mirror. "Pull over when you can do it safely," he said, "and call this in." His voice was steady, controlled, like he'd just asked for the time instead of single-handedly stopping an armed hijacking. Marcus nodded, his hands still trembling as he reached for the radio. "This is Bus 47, he managed. "We need police and medical at our location. 3 suspects in custody." As the bus pulled to the side of the road, the old man returned to seat 7, picked up his paperback novel, and resumed reading as if nothing had happened. The other passengers stared at him in shocked silence, their minds struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. Sarah, the barista, was the first to speak. Who are you?" The old man looked up from his book, met her eyes for a moment, then returned to his reading without a word. 5 minutes later, Portland PD surrounded the bus. 6 patrol cars, 2 paramedic units, and a SWAT van that hadn't been needed after all. The 3 gunmen were taken away on stretchers, not seriously injured, but thoroughly subdued. The passengers gave their statements, shaken but unharmed. Detective Ray Sullivan, a 20-year veteran of Portland PD, interviewed each witness separately. Same story from everyone. 3 armed men, apparent hijacking, old man in seat 7, neutralized all threats with minimal violence and maximum efficiency. When Sullivan got to the old man, he was still sitting in seat 7, still reading his book. "Sir, I need to get your statement," Sullivan said. The old man looked up. 3 individuals attempted to commandeer this vehicle using inferior weapons and inadequate planning. I intervened to protect civilian lives. End of statement. Sullivan frowned. Something about the man's vocabulary, his bearing, the clinical precision of his language. "Sir, I'm going to need a little more detail, and I'll need to see some identification." The old man reached into his jacket and handed over a driver's license. Sullivan looked at it, blinked, looked again. "Robert James Mitchell. Date of birth," Sullivan did the math. "You're 74 years old?" "Correct." "And you took down 3 armed men by yourself?" "I neutralized 3 poorly trained individuals who posed a threat to innocent civilians." The clinical language, the erect posture, the way he sat at attention even while reading. Sullivan had been a Marine himself, long ago. He recognized the signs. "Mr. Mitchell, what branch?" The old man closed his book, looked directly at Sullivan. "That's classified. Not, I was in the Army, or I served in Vietnam. Just, that's classified. Which meant special operations. Which meant this 74-year-old man reading a paperback novel on the morning bus was probably one of the most dangerous human beings Sullivan had ever encountered. "How long?" Sullivan asked quietly. 32 years. Retired in 98. Sullivan nodded slowly. The math worked. Vietnam era, maybe earlier. Cold War. Operations that never made the papers, in places that didn't officially exist. "Thank you for your service," Sullivan said. Mitchell looked at him for a long moment. "I wasn't serving today, Detective. I was just riding the bus." As the investigation wrapped up and the bus was cleared to resume service, the other passengers couldn't stop talking about what they had witnessed. Marcus restarted the engine, but his hands were still shaking. In 20 years of driving, he'd never seen anything like it. "You okay, Pops?" he called back to seat 7. Mitchell looked up from his book, the same page he'd been reading when the hijacking started. "I'm fine, Marcus. Thank you for asking." It was the first time in 20 years that Marcus had heard him speak his name. How had the old man known it? The bus resumed its route, 3 stops behind schedule, but carrying a cargo of 15 people who would never forget what they had witnessed. As they approached the final stops on the east side, passengers began getting off with quiet nods toward seat 7. Sarah left her business card on the empty seat next to him. Free coffee for life, if he ever wanted it. At the end of the line, Mitchell was the last passenger. He stood, gathered his messenger bag and thermos, and walked toward the front of the bus. As he passed Marcus, he paused. "Those men," he said quietly. "They weren't professionals. Probably first-time offense, maybe drugs involved. They'll get counseling and county lockup, maybe straighten their lives out." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "The system worked today," Mitchell continued. "Nobody died, nobody got seriously hurt. That's how it's supposed to end." He turned to go, then looked back one more time. "Same time tomorrow, Marcus, if that's all right with you." Marcus managed a smile. "Seat 7 will be waiting for you, Pops." The next morning, at exactly 7:30 a.m., Bus 47 pulled up to Pine and 12th Street. The doors hissed open, and Robert Mitchell climbed aboard with exact change and a quiet nod. He walked to seat 7, sat by the window, and opened his paperback novel. But now the other passengers looked at him differently. Sarah offered him coffee, which he politely declined. The construction crew nodded respectfully. The office workers glanced up from their phones, and Marcus watched him in the rearview mirror. This 74-year-old guardian angel who had chosen to spend his golden years protecting strangers on the morning commute. Some heroes wear uniforms and carry badges. Others read paperback novels on city buses and wait for the moment when ordinary people need them most. They don't ask for recognition, don't tell their stories, don't explain their past. They just show up, do what needs to be done, and return to the quiet anonymity they've earned through decades of service. Robert Mitchell rode Bus 47 for 5 more years before moving to be closer to his daughter in Seattle. The other passengers never learned about his 3 Purple Hearts, his classified operations in places that didn't exist, or the 47 lives he'd saved in official capacity before he ever set foot on a Portland City bus. But they knew he was there, watching over them, making sure they got home safely to their families. And sometimes, that's all the heroism the world needs. So I ask you, have you ever sat next to someone extraordinary and never known it? Have you shared space with a guardian you never recognized? Tell us in the comments, because here at Human Stories, we believe that the greatest heroes are often the ones sitting quietly in the back, waiting for the moment when ordinary people need them most. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Help us honor the silent protectors who ride among us, asking nothing, giving everything. Until next time, remember, the person sitting next to you might just be the most important person you never knew.